Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? Hope you're all well. Now, before we kick off with this webinar, if anybody's having any sort of technical challenges in viewing this webinar session at all, what I'd highly recommend is to go through the usual kind of tech checks that we all tend to go through if something doesn't work for us first time around. Feel free to refresh this web browser page. That is if you are tuned in via your laptop or a desktop computer. Alternatively, if you are tuning in on your phone or a tablet device, feel free to come out of the YouTube app that you're in right now and then click back on the link that you received for this webinar session, and hopefully everything will open up correctly for you within the YouTube app as well going forward. So for those of you who are okay and can hear and see me clearly, that's wonderful. Feel free to grab yourself a pen and some paper just so you can kind of jot down some notes as we go along throughout the course of this session. One of the things to note about this webinar session that we are running live today is that captioning is available throughout the course of this session. So if you did require live captioning as we go along, feel free to hover over onto this YouTube video. You see that there's a small icon, which is the letter CC inside of a square box. That is the icon for you to turn captioning on and or off as well. So feel free to use that facility if you do require that going forward. Okay, so I hope everyone's geared up for this session. So welcome to this Google Digital Garage webinar session, all about how to build a CV and write a cover letter. My name is Rikesh. I'm going to be your presenter, taking you through the course of this session, which is going to last for approximately 60 minutes. So I'll first of all kick off with a little bit about me. So I'm a trainer working for Google's digital skills program, Google Digital Garage, as well as being a trainer for Google Digital Garage. I'm also a digital marketer. So I work with businesses to help them to create and grow an online presence in order to attract more customers and clients to their business offering. Now, before I used to work in the world of marketing, I used to work in a completely different industry, which did require me when I was applying for roles was to produce CV and cover letter documents. And that's going to be the focus of today's webinar session. So that's just a little bit about me. I'd also like to introduce to you at this stage my colleague and fellow Google Digital Garage trainer, and that is Nar. Now, you'll see that Nar is going to be our chat moderator today. So you might have already spotted the live chat on the right-hand side of your YouTube page. That is your space over the course of the next hour to drop in your comments, drop in your questions. And also, you'll see questions that you will see appear on screen. So I'd love to get your answers and your thoughts on these questions that you see here on screen, especially because of the topic that we're discussing, which is building a CV and writing a cover letter. These are kind of two documents which many of us on this live webinar session will have had some level of experience with, whether it be creating a CV, whether it be creating a CV and cover letter and then sending that off as part of your total job application for a vacancy that you've applied for. We all have different experiences and we all kind of come at things from different angles, and kind of we've maybe been taught different things as well. So feel free to kind of bring that to the table as we go along. I know some of you have been getting involved in the chat, so welcome to Shrada, welcome to Asan, welcome to Joaquin as well. So welcome to you all. Really hope that you find this webinar session useful. Now, this session that we're running on Build a CV and Write a Cover Letter is one of many webinars that we actually run as part of a wider Google Digital Garage webinar offering. So if you have a look down below me where I'm pointing, you'll see that there is a video description box. Contained within one of the paragraphs in the video description box is a link to the Google Digital Garage website, which some of you might have already used in order to sign up for this webinar session. So if you go into the live training tab, you'll be able to have a look at some of the other training sessions that we also run online. And these webinars that we do run online are available for you to attend at no charge, just like this session is as well. And you can also break down the live training sessions in terms of sessions which are predominantly focused around the world of kind of marketing or kind of digital marketing compared to more career development webinar sessions, just like what we are covering today as well. You'll also find another fantastic resource on the Google Digital Garage website, which is the online courses page, where you'll see a list of lots of different online courses that you can complete in your own time at your own pace at no charge. There is a course called the Fundamentals of Digital Marketing course that you'll probably see appear first on that page. And the reason for that is that course actually has an added bonus in that upon completing this course, which is called Fundamentals of Digital Marketing, which kind of gives you an overview as how businesses and organizations promote their products or service offering online, you'll actually receive a certificate once you've completed that course. That's a certificate from Google recognizing that you've completed that course. And you'll also find some fantastic courses on that page, which you can kind of filter out, which are kind of geared more towards landing your next job, or building confidence through self-promotion, which is all kind of in line with kind of career development going forward as well. So definitely check out all of that fantastic, all of those fantastic resources on the Google Digital Garage website. But let's now have a look at what we're covering in this session, all about to build a CV and write a cover letter. So in this session, we're actually going to be looking at, first of all, we're going to be looking at the CV document. So we're going to be looking at kind of what makes up a CV document, what should we include in there. And I'm sure over time, over years, maybe through our academic education, whether it be school or college or even university, and even to maybe a lesser extent, even kind of previous jobs that we've had, might have kind of led us to believe certain types of information should be included in CV and other types shouldn't. And we all kind of have our own kind of playbook and rule book in our own mind in terms of what should be included within this document. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of consolidate that information, so that when you are kind of touching up your CV, that's something which you can hopefully just kind of keep in mind when you are making amendments to that document. We're then going to be looking at how to go about writing a cover letter. And this is quite important to be aware of, because from my own personal experience, I know it's been it can be for me quite challenging to start a cover letter and understand, well, how do I kind of structure it? What do I put into that particular letter? So what we're actually going to be going through in this session, when we get into the second part of this session, is we're going to be going through what we identified to be a good structure or framework. So feel free to jot down the structure that we're going to be going through. And this structure is hopefully something that you can tangibly take away with you and then apply it and mold it within the next cover letter that you sit down and type up going forward as well. And then we'll finally wrap up this session just by looking at some kind of guiding principles or kind of best practices just to think about when you are kind of searching for jobs, and generally kind of searching for jobs online as it is these days as well. Now, before we get into looking at kind of CVs, which is the first part of our session, I want to draw your attention to another fantastic resource that is available from Google. You can see the title says free career certificates available from Google. So this kind of refers essentially to flexible online training courses that are provided by Google, which are designed to earn you job-ready skills within various what Google identified to be both high growth and high demand career sectors. Now, some of these career sectors, which essentially form the title of each one of these online courses, include the likes of IT support. They include the likes of project management, user experience design, also data analytics, and also e-commerce and digital marketing as well. So if you are based in the UK, this is a fantastic resource to check out, because usually these courses are paid for. However, Google have partnered up with various partners within the UK in order to provide these online flexible online courses at no charge. So you can find out more information using the link there on screen, and I'm sure that Noah will kindly drop a link into the chat for you as well. And I want to kick off this session by asking you a question, which is, what are your career aspirations? Now, you might be thinking, Rikesh, that's quite kind of a grand question for a Wednesday. But I just want you to kind of think about this, and you don't have to provide your answers straight away, because it's something that might require you just to kind of think about before you go ahead and kind of type away. I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts and your answers into the live chat in terms of what are your career aspirations, and myself and Noah will be picking up on these. I'd love to kind of read out as many of yours in the time that we have together. But yeah, let me know in the chat what your career aspiration. You can even rephrase this and kind of say, what's my where do I want to be in my career in 5 years time or 10 years time, or just give yourself kind of a number or kind of a deadline, I guess, to say where you want to be. So even though you've got the question, what are your career aspirations on screen, feel free to kind of mold it as long as it kind of fits in line with what your kind of career aspiration, career goal, career objective, however you wish to kind of phrase it, I think it's important just to kind of be aware of that factor. And if you are comfortable to do so, feel free to share in the live chat. Remember, in order to type away in the live chat, you'll simply just need to sign into your YouTube account, which is very quick and easy to do. So let's actually have a look at your, let's actually have a look at kind of the first part of this session in terms of looking at CVs first and foremost, and how we go about building a CV document. So a very quick question, whilst you're thinking about career aspirations and kind of jotting down what it is that you're looking to achieve, whether it be a qualification. If it is a qualification, feel free to kind of clarify what qualification is, because I might not know exactly what that qualification means per se. But another question I want to kind of just pop into the chat for you that I'd love to get your answer on, just kind of more kind of quick fire type of question here, is what's the primary purpose of a CV? So let me know in the in the chat right now. What do you think kind of the main reason is that we create CV document? What's the reason that you will see on job vacancies that will say, please send a copy of your CV? So feel free to kind of jot that down in the chat for right. Why do you think that employers, why do you think recruiters ask for a CV document? What's the reason for it? Why do they need this document? Without even, first of all, looking at what that document is, we're just looking at the purpose for it. So just picking up on some comments here in the chat. So Sasha's mentioned to show recruiters why we are suitable for a particular job. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great comment there, Sasha. Joaquin's mentioned convince the employer. Yeah. I think probably to add on to that, it's probably convince the employer that you are the perfect candidate to fill this vacancy, right? Lee's kind of hit kind of the nail on the head as well, in terms of, you mentioned, Lee, to sell yourself. Absolutely, yeah. And Harris has mentioned the CV should be the window of a store, lure employers or recruiters to come inside. Yeah, I really love that. Fantastic. Thank you very much for that contribution there, Harris. It's a really nice way of looking at a CV document. Just kind of think of it like a window for a store, and then luring people to kind of come inside, and hopefully that's when you can go ahead and sell yourself, like Lee mentioned as well. And Muhammad Dear, apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly, to show what you're capable of. Yeah, absolutely, to kind of show what you are all about as a potential candidate. Ben has mentioned to filter employees as fastly and as efficiently as possible. Yeah, that's probably kind of that's probably, I guess, more on a recruiter or employer side. That's what they want to do. They kind of are they're wanting CVs to kind of filter out the, I guess, the strongest candidates, as opposed to kind of more of the weaker ones as well. Lee's also contributed to mention to show you had the right skill set for that position. So that's fantastic. So thank you very much for all those contributions. Now, I don't know about yourselves, but I definitely had this kind of misconception years ago, especially when I kind of graduated from university, that I just thought a CV document was basically a document where I just list down all of my education and my work history, and that's it. And that's not necessarily the case. It's important to kind of showcase everything pretty much that we've kind of done in our life, albeit in a concise format. Now, that all kind of stems from the fact that curriculum vitae is the full name, or kind of the full Latin phrase of what we've abbreviated it as, which is CV. But what you can see here, curriculum vitae translates in English to be and to mean the course of your life. So it's just not only the fact that we've got to sell ourselves, as Harris mentioned, in terms of our employment history and our education history as well, but also we can get across, as was mentioned in the chat, as well as Lee mentioned, in terms of showcasing that we've got the right skill set as well, and that's something that we'll come on to going forward as well. Now, it's very important when it comes to a CV document, and I'm sure many of us are acutely aware of this factor, which is the fact that it's our first contact with employers. you can even rephrase that. It's our first contact with recruiters. And a lot of the times, and the way that recruitment tends to work is recruitments are kind of the halfway house between you and the employer. So they can be kind of the middle person there, but it's still kind of the first context, the first touch point that we have. So in this CV document, we want to kind of summarize our experience, whether it be our experience in terms of gaining certain skills. It might be it might be the fact of showcasing your working experience or your education history that you've got as well. And the key word there is summary, that you can see on screen. Summary. We kind of have to be brief with this document. That's something that we'll talk about a little bit later on when we come on to formatting of a CV document. We also want to showcase that we're a goal-orientated and a relevant candidate for this position, for this vacancy that we are applying for. And that's what some of you also mentioned in the chat, is that you want to showcase that you are the right person to fill this vacancy for that specific job that you're applying for. So just by that very knowledge, that we want to showcase that we are a relevant candidate for this position that we're applying for, it's very important to ensure and kind of be in the mindset of that no two CV documents should be the same. It's important to always tweak and adapt, and kind of, even if it's just a word change here or there, or just kind of change certain elements of your CV document before you submit a vacancy. You don't want to be kind of having a one blanket CV and then just basically fire that out for about 15 different jobs that you're applying for, because there's no kind of customization that you've made in accordance with the job description. That's again something that we'll discuss about later on as well. And that's kind of not in line with you showcasing that you're a relevant candidate for that position. It just shows that you are maybe a candidate rather than being a specific and kind of genuine relevant candidate for that specific role that you're applying for as well. It's also important with the CV document to start off on the best footing, which is authenticity and honesty. I think it's very, very important because if you exaggerate the truth, let's say, as some people like to kind of phrase it when it comes to CV documents, if you exaggerate the truth on your CV, then if you are fortunate enough to get an interview, then that exaggeration of the truth that you've written down, that's something which you have to carry through to that interview, and you have to keep up a certain pretense. And then if you were fortunate enough to get offered the position, then you get that job, then you might have to keep up that pretense even longer. And especially if that pretense kind of associates to a specific skill set or a specific type of experience, which you might have exaggerated on, and then you're called upon to actually kind of demonstrate that skill with maybe some work on a project or any other kind of daily task that you might be required to do, then that's something which is going to generally kind of then expose you to the fact that, oh, well, this person clearly exaggerate what they actually have, what sort of skill set or what sort of experience that they have as well. So it's always important to start off on an honest and authentic kind of footing, especially with this being our first kind of port of contact. So in terms of what a CV should include, so these are kind of what the elements which we kind of identify what should be included within a CV. Now, all of these are not in kind of the exact order in which they should be placed and mentioned about in a CV document. The only two that are in the correct order are the top two, which is basic information, so kind of contact details, and opening summary. So we'll go through each one of these in turn in brief detail. And a lot of these you might already have different sections for within your CV. So in terms of basic information, first and foremost, so this is where we want to put our name. You can see here on screen, it says address or location. The reason why we've put that there is because a lot of jobs these days, they can be kind of remote working, but a lot of jobs as well might require you to travel. And this is something which will necessarily, probably, I'd say, need to be a judgment call on your end when you are applying for a certain job role. And in alliance with any kind of research that you've done in terms of how many workspaces or offices does a particular organization have. Because if you are somebody that has a car or has access to public transport, you can, rather than kind of just put in your address, you can maybe just name certain cities within the vicinity of you that you can get to through public transport or through driving yourself. And that might be something that you think, oh, that might make me potentially stand out as a candidate, as opposed to other individuals who might just put their address as well. So this is something which is very much kind of a judgment call. You've also got contact information, so telephone number, email address, the one that's going to be most the one that kind of employers and recruiters can kind of get you on pretty much any time as well. And then any kind of relevant important information. So this might be information that might have been requested for in the job vacancy. So if you're applying for a driving position, you might be required to confirm in your CV document that you've got a full, clean driving license, for instance, as well. So that's kind of basic information, and we want to kind of kick off our CV document with this piece of information. We've then got our opening summary. So this is where we want to just kind of sell ourselves, kind of in line with what was mentioned in the chat earlier on. We want to kind of just get across who we are, what we're about, and showcase that we're the relevant candidate for the position that we're applying for with this CV document, and that we are motivated for this position to kind of get going in this position should we be offered the position itself as well. But you can see here, the only kind of constraint is a constraint of how much space we have allowed for this. So it says 2 or 3 sentences. So we don't have a lot of space to kind of sell ourselves. And the best way to kind of look at an opening summary is a bit like kind of an elevator pitch. So you might have kind of gone to kind of networking events before, or you might have even gone to kind of family events before. You might have gone to something like a family wedding or family party before, and then you might meet someone new at that family party, and they will ask you, "Oh, so what's your name?" And then they'll ask you also, "What do you do?" So it's that kind of introduction that you mention. That's what you kind of want to get across, but you don't need to mention your name. It's just about getting across who you are and what you're all about in general as well. And it's kind of like a warm introduction, this opening summary, hence kind of the name. It's kind of a warm introduction into what the reader, so whether it be employer or recruiter, what they are kind of going to be reading in the rest of your CV document as well. So it's a nice kind of warm introduction to that there as well. So that's opening summary. You've then got kind of your work experience section. So you want to put your most recent working experience at the top, and then kind of filter down from there as well. You also want to put in relevant information, such as the name of the company that you worked for or work for, if you are still working in that position. Your job title as well, and then kind of the dates. Now with dates, you don't need to get probably too specific, as long as you put in, maybe the month and the year. So let's say that you finished your position this month, you can just put February 2023, for instance. Or if you are still working, you can put till, and then you put present there as well. Now with your work experience, when you're kind of jotting down kind of maybe some of the daily tasks and responsibilities that you had within that specific job role, try and kind of mention, where possible, key projects and results that you achieved. And the reason why it's important to do that is we want to kind of circle even the working experience, even the tasks and responsibilities that we carried out within that specific job that we've mentioned on a CV. We want to circle that back to the job description in some shape or form. So these projects, these tasks that we worked on, and these are the results that we got off the back of them, they will be quite relevant because it helped you to develop this skill set, helped you to develop kind of more experience in this element. And that's something which the employer or recruiter, when they're reading it, can think, yeah, this might be quite useful for this experience from this candidate might be quite useful because this is going to really kind of be relatable for the position that they're applying for in terms of kind of future daily tasks and responsibilities as well. So it's important to kind of add that in. But the way that we want to add that in is that we only want to kind of predominantly kind of write in bullet points, because that's the only kind of space that we'll typically have. And I'll mention a bit more about this in when we come on to formatting. In work experience as well, you can also mention your volunteering experience. I think that's very, very useful, even if it's something that you did for a shorter period of time, especially if you think it's relevant to the position that you're applying for. Definitely be sure to kind of mention that. The way to kind of segment, that I like to kind of segment voluntary experiences, you can still put it in the same work experience section or block, within your CV document. But beside the job title, you can just put in brackets voluntary, and then that kind of creates a nice distinction to any kind of paid work that you've had as well. You then got your education history, so your education and achievement section. So again, you put your most recent kind of education history and achievement off the back of that that you put, and then with that, you kind of put your qualifications, whether it be a degree, whether it be a certain grade that you got as well, any sort of professional qualification. And again, you want to kind of mention in bullet point formats what sorts of kind of key projects, what sort of coursework did you do, what sort of key research did you do that you think might be useful and relevant in kind of demonstrating your knowledge or demonstrating your expertise in a certain sector, which you think is going to be relevant to the position that you're applying for as well. So again, just being kind of conscious of trying to sort of circle everything back as much as possible to a specific kind of job description for the vacancy that you're applying for as well. You've then got your skills and strengths, which for me is probably one of the most important parts of a CV document. And this kind of goes in line with what we saw with what CV means, which it means curriculum vitae, which translates to the course of your life. So as well as showcasing your work experience, your education, we also want to showcase our skills and strengths. So some important questions that we kind of want to answer within this CV document is, what qualities would people describe me as having? What soft and technical skills do I have? And how do these soft and technical skills and how do these qualities relate to the job description? So again, it's all about relating things back to a specific job going forward. So whenever we are kind of creating a CV or we're kind of making amendments to a CV for a specific job role, we always want to kind of have the vacancy either kind of printed out or kind of on a split screen, just so we can kind of refer to that and just kind of keep that in mind. So in kind of each and every element that we are kind of editing our CV on, it's important for us to kind of just keep that in our mind and think, well, how can I relate things back to that job description as well? So let's actually look at skills first and foremost. So you've got 3 types of skills that we've got here on screen, which we've broken down into. So we've got soft skills. These are kind of more interpersonal traits. Things that we might have picked up over time in general. So things like leadership qualities, teamwork, communication, which are important skills to kind of demonstrate, because these are kind of skill sets which are desirable by employers and desirable by recruiters as well. You then got your hard skills. So these are kind of these are qualities which you've either picked up through kind of, I guess, traditional education or traditional learning through kind of school or college, university, such as the likes of accounting, or you've picked up a hard skill through doing, such as if you live in a household where people speak more than one language, then you would have picked up a hard skill of being able to speak fluently in another language just by kind of doing in that sense as well. And then kind of an extension of hard skills is digital skills. And you can see examples that are here on screen, such as the likes of coding and video editing. But the reason why we've kind of segmented out kind of digital skills here is because digital skills nowadays, for kind of most industries and most jobs out there, there's an element of digital skills and digital skill proficiency as well. So it's important to be aware of that factor as well. So some examples that you can see on screen for skills include the ones in gray you can see are kind of soft skills, so teamwork or project management, leadership, networking. But remember, we want to back these up with examples to kind of demonstrate our knowledge and try, and when we're backing this up with examples, think about, well, how can this kind of relate back to the job description as well. And then you've got in blue, you've got a combination of both hard skills and digital skills as well. So for example, with video editing, that's a skill which I picked up, but I picked it up through doing, as opposed to, I guess, traditional education. In terms of video editing, for me, I actually learned through going through tutorial videos on YouTube, and that's how I learned. So it's kind of more non-traditional means, but by doing and kind of practicing that skill, that's something which kind of helped me to become proficient at it as well. So as well as skills, it's always also important to kind of be aware of your strengths. So other questions to kind of ask yourself and look to kind of answer within your CV in this block here is thinking about what are you good at, what do you like doing, what makes you stand out. Now, if this is if this is something which you might struggle with the answer for, that's okay, because sometimes we don't really know what we are good at or what we like doing or what makes us stand out, because we're a bit too close to ourselves in that sense. However, somebody who knows us quite well, who may have some level of kind of, I guess, impartiality. So maybe not kind of a family member or very close friend, maybe someone who's a family friend, for instance, they can actually tell you, oh yeah, you're actually good at this, or this is what you like doing because you talk about it loads. For example, they might be able to kind of help to identify strengths of yours as well. And these are qualities naturally that you pick up over time, very similar to kind of soft skills. But these are kind of qualities. Examples include such as like sort of you are enthusiastic, you are dependable, you're hardworking, you're passionate. Again, these are qualities which employers and recruiters are actively looking for as well. But again, you want to back this up with examples. So your solution focus, okay, well, back that up with an example of when you were solution focused as well. So you want to circle things back as much as possible. You then got experience as well. So we want to, in terms of kind of what constitutes experience, there's loads of different kind of examples that you can see on screen. So internships, work experience, volunteering as well. So just kind of just be aware of all the different kind of facets that you can see here on screen, and other kind of other types of kind of other types of kind of activities that you might have done, which might constitute experience as well. But even with experience, we want to circle things back. So what do we do? What do we achieve? And how does this relate to the job that we're applying for as well? Now, in terms of formatting, something I mentioned earlier on, in terms of the length of a CV document, a CV document for the vast majority of industries should be no more than 2 sides of A4 piece of paper, essentially. There are exceptions, especially in kind of the science world. I know that a cousin of mine, a number of years ago, she applied for a PhD, and as well as her, I guess, 2-page or 2 sides of A4 piece of paper CV, she also had to include a lot of kind of research findings from previous kind of studies that she'd done as well, because they requested for it as well. But on a whole, in terms of the actual CV document, generally it's kind of no more than 2 sides of A4 piece of paper. In terms of kind of where everything kind of fits in, you can see that contact details and opening summary in this kind of building block graphic that you can see here on screen. Contact details and opening summary are the 2 that are kind of fixed at the top in the exact order. And then you can see with these examples as well that references section is at the bottom. If you do find yourself kind of running out of space when you get to references at the end of that second page of the A4 piece of paper, then something which I've done on my CV in the past is I'll put a heading that says references, but underneath I'll just kind of put a 1 line or kind of 1 phrase that says available upon request, rather than kind of putting the detail of the references, because I simply don't have space for that there as well. So it's important just to be aware of that factor. Now, in terms of kind of creating your CV, if you're creating it from scratch, there's some fantastic templates out there. You can check out places such as the likes of Google Docs. There's some fantastic CV templates on there. You've also got platforms like Canva, spelled Canva, where you can see some fantastic CV templates that are available at no charge. And there's some also premium templates that you can kind of upgrade your Canva account to if you wish to as well at a price. And then there's also some fantastic kind of free CV templates. If you just Google it, I'm sure you'll find lots of different templates out there. And I'm sure you'll be able to kind of find one that maybe fits the industry that you're in as well. But just looking briefly at just kind of a good example and a not so good example, let's say, of a CV template. You've got kind of the one on the left-hand side is quite good because it's got black text on a white background, which is easy to read. And that's kind of one of the main things. It's important to kind of be aware of that factor. You can see that the text is all kind of is all in kind of the same size, and it's easy to read text. Everything's kind of compartmentalized quite well. So you've got a profile section, which is probably the opening summary. Then you've got experience. Then you've got education, contact details, and then you've got their name, which is kind of in a larger font at the top as well. Whereas the one on the right hand side, you've got kind of black text on kind of more of a cream or kind of beige background. You've also got kind of, in terms of the way that the text is formatted, you can see it's all kind of it's all been pushed into the center, which doesn't look as appealing on the eye, especially when you're reading through a CV document as well. So it's just being conscious about kind of the way that it's kind of laid out. But a CV template can be kind of great for you to kind of use as kind of a base layer, and then you can build upon that with your own customization as well. And some final kind of tips when it comes to CVs is write in a clear and concise manner. We don't have a lot of space, so bullet points are your friends. The only time that you don't need to really write in bullet points is when you've got those 2 or 3 short sentences where you've got your opening summary section. The rest of it should predominantly be in kind of bullet points because you don't have a lot of space. It's just 2 sides of A4 piece of paper. It's important to also be transparent about gaps in your CV document as well. So if you've maybe taken time off or taken some leave out of your career, or taken a career break, it's important to kind of mention that into your CV as well. And before you kind of submit and kind of send that CV off as part of your wider job application, feel free to get somebody to kind of glance over your CV just to kind of give you a second or third opinion. They might be able to spot things like spelling or grammatical errors that you might not have picked up on as well. So with that in mind, let's have a quick check-in on questions. I've also got some career aspirations from that question that we looked at earlier on. So let's have a look at career aspirations first. So Shrada's mentioned career aspirations for you is an MBA. Yeah, fantastic. Asan's mentioned want to become an expert in domains, including web development, app development, and software engineering. Fantastic. Joaquin's mentioned to be the best engineer in the world. That's fantastic. I really love that statement. You want to kind of stand out. You want to be kind of the industry leader in terms of engineering. Fantastic. And Yasmin's mentioned student in Faculty of Arts, but you're a student in Faculty of Arts, but you want to learn digital marketing and translation as well. So thank you very much for all of those contributions there. In terms of questions, I think we've got one. The questions that we did have coming through, I've covered this already, so that's kind of great to hear. So let's kind of move on to the next document that we're going to be looking at, which is writing a cover letter. If you've got any questions, pop them into the chat, and I'm sure Noel will be keeping on top of a lot of these questions as they're coming in as well. So in terms of writing a cover letter, it tends to kind of go hand in hand with a CV a lot of the times. And a cover letter essentially is kind of like a companion to a CV. It's kind of like it's just that, as the name suggests. It's a letter that covers on. It's a cover letter which kind of goes on top of a CV if it was all printed out. So in theory, an employer or recruiter would actually look at that cover letter first and read a little bit more about you, and then they'll go ahead and actually read your CV for a little bit more information going forward as well. But you might be thinking, well, Rikesh, do I need to include a cover letter? Let me show you some stats and figures on screen. So you can see that 40% of recruiters say that they actively look for a cover letter on job applications, and 45% of recruiters say that a lack of a cover letter will result in their CV being put onto the rejected pile. So just by those figures alone, my kind of thinking nowadays is if I was to apply for a job, I would make sure that I'm also sending in a cover letter, even if the job vacancy didn't specifically mention sending in a CV, because there are certain job vacancies where they just forget to add in saying, oh, please send a CV and a cover letter. Or they just kind of, they might just say, oh, they might just say, send a CV. And you're wondering, should I send a cover letter or not? So for me, just by kind of these stats alone, it just kind of takes out the ambiguity. And for me, I can kind of just think as a candidate, well, it creates no harm in me actually sending a cover letter because it's helping to kind of provide a little bit more context to my CV document as well. So in terms of kind of the structure, something I mentioned at the beginning of this session, a really good structure that we identify is what you can see here on screen for creating a cover letter. And we'll break in each one of these elements down in turn. So feel free to kind of jot these down as we go along. Kicking off with kind of our greeting. So hi, very informal. Hello, maybe a little bit old-fashioned, but dear's a classic one. But then after dear, you want to try and find out the name of the hiring manager, the person who is in charge of that vacancy. Now, a lot of the times, that will be very easy to find. You'll find the name of the person in the job description, in the vacancy somewhere. However, if that's not the case, then you might need to do a little bit of digging around and kind of research and find out who is the main person that's going to be seeing your CV and cover letter. Now, if you are really, really, really struggling, then you can kind of just create a generic one, just saying dear sir / madam. But where possible, try and find the name of that individual who's going to be looking at your cover letter and CV first and foremost, because it starts off the cover letter in a very kind of personable tone as well, rather than being quite sort of generic, I guess. And then you kind of move into your first paragraph in a cover letter. So you want to kind of answer questions such as who you are, what you're interested in, what job are you applying for. Very important question to kind of mention here in the introduction, because recruiters and employers typically are a lot of the times applying for recruiting and hiring for more than one position within that same company. So we want to make sure that our CV and cover letter gets put onto the correct pile. So that's why we want to kind of mention it from the very outset in the introductory paragraph. And then also this question of where did you hear about it? Now, this question of where did we hear about the vacancy, it doesn't really mean a lot to us, but it can mean the world to a potential employer or recruiter, because it kind of helps them to think, oh yeah, you heard about it through LinkedIn. Okay, that's great. It's good that people are seeing our advert on our job advert on LinkedIn, or seeing it through a particular job board site as well. So that's kind of like the introductory paragraph. We then got a summary paragraph, which is where you summarize yourself. So this is what I like to call kind of the power paragraph. So you can go in depth and talk about your strengths here. So what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? What do people say that you really have a drive and a passion for as well? So you can answer these questions. What's important to me? What am I good at? What do I enjoy as well? And then we kind of move into the next paragraph of our cover letter structure, which is a problem versus solution paragraph. So this is where we want to just kind of think, well, looking at the job description, why is this company hiring? What are they looking to solve by hiring a candidate for this job role? Now, a lot of the times you'll find the information out by reading and rereading the job description, and kind of like really kind of going over some of the language used with kind of a fine tooth comb. However, if that's not necessarily the case, maybe do a bit of research around the industry, why they're hiring. It might just be that it's an industry that's kind of kind of recently kind of growing. It's kind of trending in the correct direction, I guess, of going upwards. So it's important just to kind of find out. So it could be the fact that they need someone because they are expanding, which is fine. But we want to identify that, because then also we basically want to kind of stick our hand up, or stick our kind of virtual hand up and say, we're the solution. And we can mention that within our CV within our cover letter document, within this paragraph in our cover letter as well. And we'll look at an example of problem versus solution paragraph when we go on to kind of like a worked example of how this structure kind of really kind of comes into its own as well. We've then got kind of our last kind of paragraph, and this is an optional paragraph, which is where we want to mention relevant achievements, and the keyword there being relevant. So relevant to the position that we are applying for. So we can mention any kind of other languages that we speak that we think might be relevant for the job that we're applying for. We can also mention any sort of relevant hobbies, interests, any other volunteering that we might want to elaborate on from our CV document, just to provide a little bit more context as well. And then finally, to finish off a letter, it will be just kind of our sign off. So you got an example here on screen, which is, I'm really honored to be considered for this position. I look forward to hearing from you. And please let me know if you'd like any more information about me. You can end it with many thanks, kind regards, and obviously switch that up if you wish to. I mean, for me, I would probably kind of switch that and say, if you'd like any more information about me, if you'd like to know more, please get in touch. I'm really honored to be considered for this position. And then the final line would be, I look forward to hearing from you. And then it'd be kind regards. That's how I would kind of phrase it. So you can mold it how you wish to as well, but it's just kind of a nice sign off. Now, with a cover letter, the length should be probably no more than one side of A4 piece of paper. However, the beauty of a cover letter is that we can write in a letter format. So we can write in sentences, we can write in paragraphs, and we kind of went through that with this kind of kind of building blocks. Each one of these are kind of paragraphs all themselves, bar kind of the greeting at the beginning and the sign off at the end. Everything else is kind of its own kind of paragraph there that we're kind of segmenting as well. So before we actually have a look at kind of a worked example of how this structure kind of fits in, a few things to kind of remember when it comes to kind of your application. And this is something that I've been mentioning throughout the course of this session, is no two CVs, no two cover letters should be the same at all. So we want to make sure that we're tailoring our application. When I say job application, that's kind of a combination between both the CV and the cover letter. So that forms our job application when we email that off or we send it in the post. But we want to kind of maybe highlight certain skills or certain qualifications over others, depending on the job that we're applying for as well. Now, certain positions as well might require you to showcase a portfolio. Now, a portfolio is kind of like a snapshot of your work, your previous work that you've done. Now, a lot of kind of creative industries ask for a portfolio of what you've done in the past, so that they can get a sense and a feel about who you are and kind of what you're all about. As well. So that's something to kind of be aware of that factor as well. So it's important to kind of tailor your application in general and also think about kind of portfolio, whether you need to kind of include that and what kind of best snapshots you can kind of provide that are relevant to the position that you are applying for as well. So let's actually have a look at this kind of worked example with our structure here. So we've got dear, which is a classic greeting, dear Mrs. Webb. So let's just kind of make the assumption that Mrs. Webb is the hiring manager for this position. We've then got our first paragraph of this cover letter, which I'm a customer assistant, currently employed by Smarks. I'd like to apply for the sales advisor role at Shirts and Skirts. So you're making sure you're getting put onto the correct pile here. And then you've also got, they've got this other kind of final sentence in this introduction, which says, I heard about the job through seeing the position advertised on jobmarket.com. Yeah. So for this person who's writing this cover letter, that last sentence means absolutely nothing to them. It doesn't really mean anything, but they put it in because this might be something which the Mrs. Webb and maybe Mrs. Webb's team, the hiring team, they might be thinking, oh yeah, it's great that we've actually posted on jobmarket.com because this person's applied through there. Maybe somebody else has mentioned it in their cover letter perhaps as well. And it gives them food for thought from their own kind of marketing efforts when it comes to posting job openings going forward as well. We've then got kind of our summarizing yourself paragraph. This is our power paragraph. So this is where we talk about our strengths. So an example here would be, I would describe myself as a friendly, helpful, and patient team member, take pride in offering great level of customer service. And the buzzwords there, I guess, of customer service, that kind of really relates to a sales advisor role as well. And I really like this sentence starter here, which says, I've been praised for. And then you can see it says the warm manner in which I deal with customers. Now, what this does as kind of a sentence starter is this kind of takes the reader, so Mrs. Webb in this scenario, who's going to be looking at the cover letter, it takes them out of thinking, oh, this person is writing about me. But when you say I've been praised for, you're kind of saying to that reader, you're saying to the employee, saying to the recruiter, other people, so colleagues who work with me or have worked with me, say that I have a warm manner in which I deal with customers as well. So that's something to kind of consider. I really do like that sentence starter myself there. Now we've then got our problem versus solution paragraph. So I think I'd be a great fit for this role because I'm pride myself in being able to cope well under stress. Now, cope well under stress is something that's actually been picked out from the job description, and you can see that they've kind of used that to say, because I actually pride myself on this factor to cope well under stress. So I'm kind of ticking that box in terms of maybe a problem or the reason why you are hiring for this position as well. And similarly, you can see with the second sentence here, I've also worked part-time markets while studying, and I'm used to dealing with a wide range of customers on a daily basis. So you can see that there as well. So that's something again picked out from the vacancy as well. You then got relevant achievements. So in my spare time, I enjoy volunteering, where I help to organize activities. So organization skills are on show, very important for a sales advisor role. I'm also taking a short part-time course of counseling as I love learning about the human mind and improving my listening skills. Again, listening skills as well, very important from a sales advisor position. Then you've got your sign off there as well. Let me have a quick check-in, see if there's any sort of questions after we've just covered that cover letter segment. And hopefully that structure is something that you can now tangibly take away at the end of this session and look to kind of apply it the next time you're sitting down to type up a cover letter for a vacancy that you are applying for as well. Now, let's actually just, as I can't see any question in the chat at the moment, let's kind of wrap up this session by looking at just some kind of guiding principles when it comes to kind of searching for jobs online in general as well. And one thing very important to note is be aware of our own digital footprint, be aware of our own online presence. Now our digital footprint, the reason why it's called digital footprint is if you think about footprint, when we kind of walk on a beach, so we're walking on sand, or if we're walking through the woods and we're walking through kind of mud, or through snow, depending on kind of the climates kind of nearby you, then we kind of leave a footprint behind, don't we? So we kind of leave a trail behind about where we've been. And that's exactly what we do with the way that we interact online. So when we post something online, or when we get tagged in a post on social media, or any pages or kind of businesses that we follow, anything that we share in general is basically part of our breadcrumb trail, our footprint trail that we are leaving behind. And that's something that we need to be consciously aware of, because you can see that 90% of recruiters actually check your social media presence to learn more about you, which makes sense, because if you think about CV and cover letter documents, they're just words on a piece of paper, right? So to learn more about a candidate or a prospective candidate, it makes sense for an employer or kind of a recruiter in this sense to actually find out a little bit more information. And that's where social media can be a very useful gateway for that as well. So that's something to be kind of aware of there. Now, as well as making sure that we are aware of what content we are kind of letting out there and letting people find out about us, we can also make sure we think about, well, what content do we want to be found for? And what kind of information do we want to post about? What kind of information and kind of post do we want to be tagged in? Which kind of maybe go in line with who we are and what industry that we want to work in. And that's quite important, because you can see that a third of employers use social media to find new recruits. And after kind of employee referrals and company websites, social media is the next kind of biggest and kind of most important recruiting tool out there as well. I'm sure some of you might have seen kind of LinkedIn ads that are out there for jobs as well. And this all kind of feeds in line with the fact that we want to kind of build our brand, our personal brand, in terms of who we are, what we're about, what industry that we are passionate about getting into, or that we currently work in, that we want to kind of maybe kind of go a little bit further in a certain direction, for example, as well. So a few kind of action steps that we can take is evaluate our social media. Think about what we can maybe untag ourselves out of, or think about whether something that we've posted is probably not in line with our values and our beliefs to this day. Maybe that's something that can be hidden or deleted perhaps as well. I think it's important to be aware of that factor, but also it's a fine line between making sure that our digital footprint reflects who we are to this day, but also we're not just kind of having a digital footprint online and an online presence online which is fake and false, because that's something which, when it gets to an interview stage, an employer and recruiter can see through that. So we want to make sure that we're authentic to ourselves as well. Also consider setting up a LinkedIn profile if you haven't yet done so already. I can't recommend LinkedIn enough, purely because when I used to work in a different industry, just by the very fact of me having a LinkedIn personal profile set up, I actually got headhunted off of that. And for me, that was incredible at the time, because I thought, wow, I'm usually the guy that kind of sends out CVs and cover letters, and somebody's actually messaged me out of the blue saying, would you like to come in for a chat? And that chat kind of turned into a job offer off the back of that as well. Always kind of consider kind of getting involved in discussions and kind of network online, especially if you're looking to kind of get into another industry, or kind of set yourself out as to be maybe an industry leader. Or I know kind of you mentioned earlier on in terms of I know Joaquin mentioned being kind of the best engineer in the world. How can you kind of join in discussions and kind of get involved in certain kind of discussions and chats to kind of demonstrate that you are the best engineer in the world, which people then naturally want to hear from you when you kind of share engaging content yourself as well. In terms of other kind of factors to be aware of when it comes to applying for jobs, especially online, is think big. We don't want to kind of narrow ourselves down, kind of dare to dream, identify any kind of trends in terms of what sort of industries, what sort of careers are kind of on the up as well, and what kind of careers are kind of evolving, that there's going to be more jobs in, for example. And also research any roles, requirements, and see whether you would be the right fit for that as well. So in terms of which tools can kind of help us to look for jobs online, You've got search engines such as the likes of Google. I'm sure most of the things these days in the world, if you need to know the answer to, including finding a job, you can kind of just Google it, right? You've also got jobs boards out there as well. So in the UK, we've got the likes of Reed and Indeed and Total Jobs, and there must be other kind of jobs board sites for those of you who are tuning in from different parts of the world as well. And then you've got professional network platforms such as the likes of LinkedIn as well, which will have a lot of kind of job postings and adverts on there. And there's a lot of recruiters on there as well. So that's something to kind of be aware of. So not only do we want to create our LinkedIn profile, we want to update it on a regular basis as well. This is typically what the Google Jobs board kind of looks like. So you can actually search by jobs and then kind of filter by certain kind of qualities, such as the job title, the location, the date that it's posted. So you can actually find jobs that are maybe just posted today and think, oh yeah, let me start working on my application for that. Think about kind of the employer, the company type as well. So there's all these kind of factors there as well. Now, whether we're looking on the Google Jobs board or on some of the jobs boards websites, or we're on professional network platforms like LinkedIn, and we're seeing these vacancies, there's things to be aware of when we're looking at these vacancies that do crop up. Now, naturally, our eyes usually do go straight through to our eyes naturally go through to kind of salary, location. That's kind of where our eyes are naturally drawn to, and that's fine, because that's kind of what kind of captures our attention. But also, it's important to look at other factors of that job vacancy. Think about kind of the daily tasks and responsibilities. Is that in line with what you want to be doing on a day-to-day basis? Think about if you have the specific skill set and experience in order to perform in that role, if you were to be kind of offered that as well. And also a really useful kind of question to kind of evaluate within the job vacancy. But this is also a question that can be asked if it's not in the vacancy. If we're fortunate enough to get through to an interview stage, this is maybe a question that we can ask to the employer, because naturally at the end of interviews, a lot of the times they'll be like, do you have any questions for us? And then you could be like, yes, I do have a question. And you can ask them, what is your commitment to my personal development? Should this position be offered to me? And you can actually just find out, well, what's kind of the progression? How can I progress within this organization and company? How can I get exposure to certain types of work that I want to kind of do more of, for instance, as well? So that's kind of other factors to kind of be aware of when we're looking at vacancies in general as well. And when it comes to kind of looking at vacancies, we want to make sure that whatever jobs we're thinking of applying for or actually going ahead to apply for, we want to make sure that they align with our values, our belief sets as well, what's important to us, and how can kind of how can a job kind of fit in with our value sets as well. Because if we're doing a job that fits in with our values, we're going to do it to a really good standard and to the best of our ability going forward as well. And that kind of also falls in line with setting ourselves some goals and objectives. So you can see here, we've got an acronym here which says SMART. So these are SMART objectives, SMART goals that we can set. So these are goals which are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So I want to work as a finance manager at a startup. Okay, that's very specific. It's measurable because I will have achieved this when I receive a job offer. So you've kind of created some kind of a condition there as well. It's achievable. So I currently work as a finance intern, so I'm in that industry already. It's realistic, so I have the knowledge and skills required. So it's definitely a realistic kind of goal, a realistic target that you set, and you've got a deadline to it as well. So I want to have achieved this goal in 2 years' time, and you can set a specific date if you wish to as well. So with that in mind, I want to kind of leave you one final question. Feel free to kind of answer this if you wish to in the final minute or so that we've got left in this session. So what are your career goals for the next year? I mean, we can just change that to what's your goal for the rest of 2023, as we're only in February as well. So feel free to kind of share that in the chat if you wish to do so as well. Let's have a quick check-in on questions. Got a quick one here from Leanne Lewis, who's mentioned, is it negative not to have a digital footprint? I don't really engage with social media. It's definitely something to consider. I think LinkedIn's definitely kind of a good kind of starting point of dipping your toe into the ocean, I guess, of social media, because you can just lay out, it kind of works a little bit like an online CV. You can just lay out your experience and your education in there as well. And then that kind of starts to create your digital footprint going forward. But it's obviously something to consider depending on which industry and which roles that you're applying for Leanne as well. So thank you very much for that question. So let's roll into your next steps. One of your next steps, definitely check this out for checking out these online courses for Google Career Certificates. Remember, if you are based in the UK, you're able to kind of take advantage of this fantastic resource. You can see some of the online training program topics on screen, such as the likes of IT support and project management as well. So I hope that you found this session useful. If you did, both myself and Noel would appreciate a little bit of feedback. We've got a feedback form link, which is on screen. I'm sure that Noel will kind of drop a link into the chat. Also, be sure to check out the Google Digital Garage website. The link is down below. Sign up for more fantastic webinars, especially on the likes of career development. We do other sessions such as the likes of Find Your Career Goals as well. That might be useful. So check out the online courses section. There's a course on there called Fundamentals of Digital Marketing course, which upon completion, you actually receive a certificate at no charge from Google, recognizing that you completed that course as well. And there's also online courses you'll find relating to career development on there as well. So definitely kind of check out all the resources, and obviously good luck going forward and kind of hopefully kind of tailor making those CV and cover letter documents to your own specification. Remember, to the job vacancies as well. So apart from that, I want to say a massive thank you to you all. I want to say massive thank you to Noam. I'm sure it's been a wonderful chat moderator, and thank you all once again for tuning into this Google Digital Garage webinar session, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you. Bye.